The conference room fell silent as David Reed placed both hands flat on the crystalline table. 7 alien faces stared back at him, each representing a different corner of the galaxy. Some had scales, others feathers. One appeared to be made entirely of shifting liquid metal. None of them looked pleased. "Ambassador Reed," Chancellor Bright said, his beak clicking with each syllable. The avian leader was old, perhaps older than any human civilization. His golden eyes held the weight of 12,000 years of galactic dominance. "Your species has exactly 48 hours to accept integration into the Galactic Empire. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy." David did not blink. He had spent 18 months preparing for this moment, ever since humanity's first faster-than-light vessel had stumbled into Imperial space. Earth had been watching the stars for decades through radio telescopes and deep space probes, learning about their neighbors in silence. The Empire spanned 400 star systems. They had never encountered resistance they could not crush. "We decline," David said simply. The chamber erupted. A delegate with 6 arms gestured wildly. Another being, composed of what looked like living stone, rumbled in a language that made the translation devices screech. Chancellor Bright raised one wing and silence returned. "You decline," the avian's voice carried amusement now. "Ambassador, I do not think you understand your situation. We have integrated 379 species into our empire. Some joined willingly. Others required convincing. All eventually saw reason." David reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. He slid it across the table. "These are coordinates to 3 locations in neutral space. I suggest you send scouts to investigate them before you make any decisions." "Threats?" A reptilian general named Crest leaned forward. His scarred hide spoke of centuries of combat. "Your world has 40 ships. We have tens of thousands. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. What could you possibly show us that would matter?" "Not threats," David corrected. "Demonstrations. We are not asking you to fear us. We are asking you to understand us." Chancellor Bright examined the data chip with obvious skepticism. "And if we choose to ignore this theatrical gesture?" "Then many people will die," David said quietly. "And that would make me very sad. Because despite everything, I believe we could be friends someday. But friendship requires respect, and respect requires understanding." The liquid metal delegate spoke for the first time, its voice like wind chimes. "You speak of friendship while refusing the natural order. Every civilization in this galaxy follows the same path. Isolation, contact, integration. It is how peace is maintained." David stood, straightening his jacket. "Peace maintained through forced submission is not peace. It is control. Earth has learned that lesson through blood and fire. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning it. We will not forget it now." "You would stand against 400 worlds?" Bright asked. "Alone?" "We would rather stand alone than kneel together," David replied. He moved toward the door. Guards tensed, but Bright waved them back. "If you leave this room, Ambassador, we will consider it an act of war." David paused at the threshold. "Chancellor, we have already considered what you will do. You will send your scouts to those coordinates. They will report back. Then you will convene an emergency session of your council. And then you will send your fleet to our world, confident that overwhelming force will break our resolve." "You seem very certain of our actions," the reptilian general growled. "Because we have studied you for 80 years, David said, turning back. "Since the day we found your probe crashed in our desert, since we realized we were not alone, we watched, we learned, we prepared, not because we wanted war, but because we feared it." He pulled a small remote from his pocket and pressed a button. Holographic displays erupted above the table, showing star charts. 3 points pulsed with red light. "First coordinates will show you what we can do to space itself. Second will demonstrate our understanding of temporal mechanics. Third will prove that faster-than-light travel can be interrupted and controlled. These are not weapons we built to conquer. They are systems we developed to survive. Because unlike every species you have ever encountered, we knew you were coming. Chancellor Bright stood now, his full height impressive. And you think this changes anything? Technology alone has never saved a species from integration. You are right, David agreed. Technology is not what will save us. Our choice will save us. We choose to be free. We choose to defend that freedom. And we choose to give you one last chance to turn away before people die for no reason. Arrogant, Crest spat. Your world has 8 billion souls. You would gamble all of them on pride. Not pride, David said softly. Principle. Our ancestors fought and died to end slavery on our world. They battled tyranny in all its forms. Millions perished learning that freedom is not given, it is taken and defended. We will not dishonor their sacrifice by surrendering what they bled for. He walked to the door, then paused one final time. Check the coordinates, Chancellor. Send your scouts. See what we have built. Then ask yourself if conquest is worth the cost. Because I promise you this, if your fleet comes to our world seeking war, we will give you war. And when it is over, you will wish you had chosen friendship instead. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. The 7 delegates sat in stunned silence. Finally, Bright spoke. Send scouts to those coordinates, immediately. 3 hours later, the reports began arriving. The first scout team found a weapon platform the size of a small moon, dormant but clearly functional. Their scans revealed technology that should not exist, physics that bent reality itself. The second team discovered something worse, a field generator that could age matter at accelerated rates. They watched it reduce a derelict station to cosmic dust in seconds. The third team never made contact. Their ships simply stopped at the boundary of the designated zone, frozen in space-time, unable to advance or retreat until the field released them 30 minutes later. Chancellor Bright read the reports 3 times. Then he called an emergency session of the full council. 400 worlds represented, 400 voices demanding action. They have shown us toys, Crest declared. Demonstrations mean nothing. We vote for war. The council agreed. 300 ships would become 500. They would crush this upstart world and claim its technology. Humanity would learn its place in the galactic order. But one junior delegate, a small mammalian creature named Pip, pulled old files from the restricted archives. He found a report from 2 centuries past. An explorer had visited Earth's system and marked it as a quarantine zone, not because the world was dangerous, but because the explorer had been afraid. The final line of that ancient report made Pip's blood run cold. They offered to share their food with us. They called it hospitality. I lied about equipment failure and fled. Any species that greets armed strangers with friendship is too dangerous to contact. Pip looked up at the ceiling of his small quarters aboard the council flagship. Somewhere out there, 500 ships were preparing to attack a world that had only wanted to be left alone. He began copying files. If this went wrong, someone needed to know the truth. 500 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their arrival creating ripples in spacetime that made nearby asteroids tumble in new orbits. Admiral Crest stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the tactical display populate with data. His reptilian eyes narrowed as the scans came back. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble orbiting a yellow star. 40 human vessels floated in defensive positions around their homeworld. The scanners labeled them as outdated designs, barely capable of light-speed travel, armed with primitive projectile weapons. Crest felt his confidence surge. This would be over quickly. Admiral, we are detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system, his sensor officer reported. The young officer's scales were still bright green, unmarked by combat. Multiple sources, but no visible installations. Likely their demonstration platforms, Crest dismissed. Focus on their fleet. Calculate firing solutions. 3 AU away, aboard Earth's command station hidden in the asteroid belt, General Stone watched the same tactical display. His gray hair and weathered face showed 60 years of military service, the last 20 spent preparing for this exact scenario. He touched his earpiece. All stations, this is Stone. Weapons hold. I repeat, weapons hold. Let them make the first move. Dr. Amy Foster stood beside him, her tablet showing data streams from 1,000 sensors scattered across the solar system. Their formation is aggressive but standard. They are expecting us to either surrender or charge. They do not know about the mines. Stone nodded. The solar system had been transformed over the past 80 years. Every asteroid, every moon, every stable orbit point had been surveyed and weaponized. Not with obvious installations, but with technology humanity had developed in secret. The Empire was about to learn that Earth's greatest advantage was not technology, but patience. Incoming transmission from their flagship, the communications officer announced. Crest's scarred face appeared on the main screen. Human vessels, you are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with destruction. You have 6 hours to comply. General Stone activated his microphone. Admiral Crest, this is General Marcus Stone of Earth Defense Forces. I am authorized to offer you one final chance to withdraw. Leave our system now and no blood will be spilled. Crest's laugh was harsh. General, I have fought in 200 campaigns across this galaxy. I have never lost a battle. Your 40 ships against my 500 is not a battle, it is an execution. Save your people the pain. Surrender. Then the blood is on your hands, Stone said quietly and closed the channel. Fire a warning shot at that mining station, Crest ordered, pointing to an unmanned facility orbiting Mars. Show them we are serious. 3 of his destroyers opened fire, energy beams lancing across space at the speed of light. The beams should have vaporized the station instantly. Instead, they struck an invisible barrier 50 kilometers away and dissipated harmlessly, the energy absorbed and scattered. Shields, Crest demanded. They did not register on our scans. Not shields, sir, his science officer reported, tentacles writhing in confusion. Some kind of spatial distortion. It is bending the beams around the station. I have never seen anything like it. Adjust targeting. Use kinetic weapons. Railgun rounds screamed through the vacuum, magnetic accelerators launching tungsten slugs at incredible velocities. Again, the invisible barrier caught them, slowing the projectiles to a stop before they could impact. The rounds hung in space for a moment, then fell away, their momentum completely negated. On Earth's command station, Dr. Foster smiled grimly. Spatial compression fields are working perfectly. They cannot touch anything we are protecting. Launch Phase 2, Stone ordered. Across the solar system, what the Empire had mistaken for asteroids began to move. Thousands of them, each one a camouflaged weapons platform. They had been waiting for decades, patient and silent, indistinguishable from natural space debris. Admiral, we have multiple contacts, Crest's sensor officer shouted. Tens of thousands of new signatures, all active, all targeting us. Crest stared at the tactical display as it transformed from a simple battle into a nightmare. His fleet was surrounded. All ships, evasive maneuvers, return fire. The battle began in earnest. Imperial ships fired energy weapons and missiles in all directions, trying to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer volume. But the human platforms did not use energy weapons. They used something far simpler and far more deadly. Railguns, thousands of them, hidden throughout the asteroid belt and beyond. Each platform calculated trajectories with quantum computers, coordinating with every other platform to create overlapping fields of fire. Tungsten rods, each one moving at 30% of light speed, began shredding through Imperial shields designed to deflect energy, not physical impacts. The first destroyer broke apart, its hull punctured by 3 simultaneous hits. The second lost its engines. The third started spinning wildly as its stabilizers were destroyed. Within 10 minutes, 50 Imperial ships were disabled or destroyed. "Retreat," Crest finally ordered, his pride broken by the reality of his situation. "All ships fall back to Rally Point Delta." The Imperial fleet began an organized withdrawal, their faster-than-light drives charging. But then something else activated. The third demonstration platform, the one that had frozen the scouts in space-time, came online. Suddenly, 300 Imperial ships found their FTL systems offline, trapped in normal space. "We cannot jump," his navigation officer reported. "Something is suppressing our faster-than-light fields." The human platform stopped firing. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the battle had been. Then General Stone's voice came over an open channel, broadcast to every Imperial ship. "Admiral Crest, we have disabled your ability to flee. Your shields are failing, your weapons are depleted, and my platforms have firing solutions on every single one of your vessels. I could end this battle in the next 60 seconds, but I am going to offer you something instead." "What?" Crest managed, his voice thick with shock. "Mercy, power down your weapons systems completely. We will tow your damaged ships to safe orbit. We will provide medical aid to your wounded. And then we will let you leave, all of you, to return to your council and deliver a message." "What message?" Crest asked, barely believing what he was hearing. "That Earth does not want war. We never wanted war. But if war comes to us, we will win it. Not because we have better weapons, though we do. Not because we have better training, though we do. We will win because we learned something your empire never needed to learn. We learned that the best victory is one where your enemy survives to become your friend." Crest looked at the tactical display. 200 of his ships had been disabled in the opening minutes. The humans could have destroyed them all. Instead, they had targeted engines and weapons, preserving life support systems. Even now, he could see human vessels approaching his damaged ships, broadcasting medical offers on open frequencies. "Stand down," he ordered his fleet. "All weapons offline." Over the next 6 hours, human crews boarded every damaged Imperial ship. They brought medical supplies, repair equipment, and food. They treated wounded aliens with the same care they would treat their own people. They asked for nothing in return. Pip watched from his station aboard the Council flagship, which had remained safely behind the battle lines. He recorded everything, every act of mercy, every moment where humans chose preservation over destruction. When the faster-than-light suppression field finally released, Crest prepared his fleet for departure. His ships were battered but functional, his wounded were stabilized, and his pride was in ruins. General Stone's final transmission was simple. "Tell your council what happened here. Tell them we kept our word. We gave you every chance to turn away. And when you attacked us, we still chose mercy. Tell them that humans remember their friends and we would rather have friends than subjects." The Imperial fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished, leaving the solar system as quietly as they had arrived, but carrying a very different message than they had intended to deliver. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 16 hours. Delegates from 400 worlds filled the chamber, their voices creating a chaos of sound that even the translation devices struggled to process. Chancellor Bright sat at the center, listening to the same arguments repeat themselves in different languages. "They humiliated us," roared a delegate whose species resembled living crystal. "Our fleet was defeated by a primitive world. This cannot stand." "They showed mercy," Pip countered from his small podium. "They could have destroyed every ship. Instead, they healed our wounded and let us leave. Does this not deserve consideration?" "Mercy is weakness," another delegate hissed. "The serpentine creature had ruled its world through force for 3 centuries. They seek to make us look foolish. We must respond with overwhelming power. Admiral Crest stood to speak, his scarred hide looking somehow smaller than before. Honored delegates, I led that fleet. I saw what they did. Their weapons are beyond our current understanding. They did not just defeat us. They controlled every aspect of the battle from the first second. We were never in a fight. We were in a demonstration. Then we send a larger fleet, the Crystal delegate insisted. 10,000 ships. 20,000. We mobilize every world and crush them. Chancellor Bright finally raised his wing for silence. The chamber quieted. We have ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. In that time, we have integrated 379 species. We have done this through superior technology, unified purpose, and the understanding that resistance is futile. But these humans have shown us something we have not seen in millennia. What is that? Asked a delegate composed of flowing energy. Choice, Bright said simply. They chose to prepare. They chose to warn us. They chose to demonstrate rather than destroy. And they chose mercy over victory. Each choice was deliberate. Each choice showed strength, not weakness. Pip quickly accessed his data files and projected them across the chamber. I have been researching human history. Their species nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could end all life on their world. But they stopped. They chose a different path. They built unity from diversity. They learned that strength serves peace, not power. Pretty words, the Serpentine delegate scoffed. Words do not change reality. They possess technology that threatens our dominance. They must be controlled or eliminated. Or befriended, Bright said quietly. The chamber fell absolutely silent. I am proposing something unprecedented. I wish to visit Earth, alone, unarmed, to understand these humans before we make a decision that could cost billions of lives. The chamber erupted again. Half the delegates called it suicide. The other half called it surrender. But Bright stood firm, his ancient eyes scanning the assembly. 12,000 years ago, my ancestors were given a choice: join the empire or be destroyed. They joined. Our culture, our language, our traditions were slowly absorbed into something larger. We told ourselves this was progress. But in my private moments, I wonder what we lost. These humans are offering us a different perspective. I need to see it for myself. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, Bright won by a narrow margin, but there were conditions. If anything happened to him, the full might of the Empire would descend on Earth. No mercy, no hesitation, complete annihilation. 1 week later, Bright's small personal shuttle approached Earth. The planet grew larger in his viewport, and he felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear, not of death, but of being wrong. If he had misjudged these humans, if their mercy had been a trick, then he was flying to his execution. Human fighters escorted his shuttle down through the atmosphere. He saw oceans and continents, cities lit up like jewels in the night, massive structures that spoke of advanced engineering. His shuttle landed in a city called Geneva, and the door opened to reveal fresh air and the smell of growing things. Ambassador David Reed stood waiting, flanked by 2 human soldiers who carried no visible weapons. President Maria Torres stood beside him, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair. She stepped forward and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Chancellor Bright, welcome to Earth. We are honored by your presence. Bright carefully took her hand, mimicking the gesture. Her grip was firm but gentle. President Torres, I hope I have not made a terrible mistake in coming here. We hope that too, she said with a small smile. Come, we have much to show you. The tour began at the United Nations Memorial, a structure built to honor the billions who had died in human conflicts over the centuries. Bright walked through halls lined with names, so many names that they seemed to go on forever. Each name represents a life lost to war, Maria explained. We built this place to remember the cost, so we would never forget why peace matters more than pride. Your people died by the billions, Bright asked, shocked. Our people killed each other by the billions, David corrected. Wars over resources, over beliefs, over skin color, over invisible lines on maps. We nearly made ourselves extinct multiple times, but each time we chose to try again, to be better. The next stop was a research facility where human scientists worked alongside the wounded Imperial soldiers who had chosen to remain on Earth temporarily while they healed. Bright watched a human doctor teaching an alien medic how to use Earth's advanced surgical techniques. "Why help them?" Bright asked. "They came to conquer you." Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her work. "Because they are hurt and we can help. What they intended does not change what they need. Besides, teaching costs us nothing but time and might save lives in the future. That seems like a good trade." Bright was taken to schools where human children learned dozens of languages and studied the cultures of 100 different human civilizations. He saw markets where people from every continent traded goods and ideas. He visited a factory where weapons were being decommissioned and converted into tools for deep space exploration. "You are dismantling your weapons?" he asked in disbelief. "Some of them," General Stone explained. He had joined the tour that afternoon. "We keep what we need for defense, but we were building for war. Now we are building for peace. The resources are better used exploring than threatening." That evening, Bright stood in a park and watched human families enjoying the warm weather. Children played games he did not understand. Adults shared food and laughter. A small human child approached him, curious. "Are you an alien?" the girl asked, maybe 6 years old. "I am," Bright confirmed. "Cool, do you want to play with us?" Before Bright could answer, the girl's mother rushed over, apologizing, but Bright raised a wing to stop her. "I would like that very much," he said. The girl beamed and ran off to get her friends. For the next hour, Chancellor Bright, leader of a 400-world empire, played a simple human game with children who saw him not as a threat or a ruler, but as someone different who might be fun to know. That night, unable to sleep, Bright stood at his guest quarters window and looked out at Earth's lights. Each point of light was a life, a dream, a hope, billions of them. Maria joined him on the balcony. "We are not perfect," she said quietly. "We still have conflicts, we still make mistakes, but we try. Every day we try to be better than we were yesterday." "Your weapons could destroy my fleet," Bright said. "You could have killed us all." "We could have," Maria agreed. "But what would that prove? That we are strong? We already knew that. Strength is easy. Mercy is hard. And choosing when to use strength and when to show mercy, that is wisdom. We are still learning wisdom." Bright turned to face her. "The hardliners in my council are planning a coup. They will order the full fleet to attack whether I approve or not. 20,000 ships. They fear what you represent more than they fear your weapons." "We know," Maria said calmly. "We detected the communications. We have been preparing." "You will fight." "We will defend ourselves. But Chancellor, we will not fire first. Even knowing what is coming, we will not strike preemptively, because that would make us what they fear we are." Bright felt something break inside him, a certainty he had carried for centuries. "You truly mean that?" "Every word." "Then I will stop them," Bright declared. "I will use every law, every tradition, every favor I am owed, because you are right. Mercy is not weakness, and a galaxy built on choice is better than one built on conquest." The transmission reached Chancellor Bright at dawn. He sat in his Earth quarters reading ancient human philosophy when the encrypted message arrived. His second-in-command aboard the Council flagship sent a single line of text. "They are moving. 6 hours until fleet mobilization. I cannot stop them." Bright closed his eyes. Despite everything, despite his efforts, the hardliners had won. 20,000 ships would converge on Earth within the week. He looked out the window at the city below, where humans were beginning their daily routines, unaware of the storm approaching. A knock at his door. President Maria entered, carrying 2 cups of what humans called coffee. She sat across from him and slid one cup in his direction. "You received word," she said. "It was not a question." "How did you know?" "Your expression. Also, our deep space sensors picked up fleet movements 3 hours ago. 23,000 ships, to be precise. They are gathering at Rally Point Sigma, just outside our detection range if we were not specifically looking." Bright took the cup, letting the warmth seep into his hands. "You knew this would happen." "We calculated a 73% probability," Maria admitted. "Your empire has never been challenged successfully. The concept threatens everything they believe about the natural order. Fear makes people do terrible things." "I failed," Bright said quietly. "I could not convince them." "You convinced yourself," Maria replied. "That matters more than you know." "It will not matter when the fleet arrives." Maria smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Bright pause. "Chancellor, may I show you something?" 20 minutes later, they stood in a facility deep beneath the European mountains. The chamber was massive, filled with technology that made even Bright's advanced understanding seem primitive. Dr. Foster stood at a control station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "This is the Horizon Network," Maria explained. 17 years in development. It connects every defensive platform, every sensor, every weapon system humanity has deployed across 1,000 light-years of space, not just in our solar system, beyond it. "How far beyond?" Bright asked, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Foster pulled up a star map. Red dots appeared, thousands of them spreading out from Earth in all directions. "We have platforms in 412 star systems. Every one is uninhabited, neutral space. We have been building while everyone else was watching. We did not put all our defenses at home. We scattered them across the galaxy." "But why?" "Because defense is not about protecting one world," General Stone said, entering the chamber. "It is about ensuring that attacking us costs more than it could possibly gain. Your fleet of 20,000 ships is impressive, but our network can engage them from 100 different directions simultaneously. We can force them to divide their forces or face encirclement." Bright studied the map. "You are saying you could defeat 20,000 ships." "We are saying we would rather not fight them at all," Maria corrected. "But we needed you to understand the reality. Your hardliners think they can overwhelm us with numbers. They are wrong. And when they realize they are wrong, a lot of people are going to die unless we find another way." "What other way?" Bright asked. Maria's expression became serious. "We broadcast the truth, everything that happened at our first battle, everything you have seen here. We send it to every world in your empire simultaneously. Let the people see what their leaders are choosing for them." "That would be considered an act of war," Bright said. "Interference in imperial communications." "So would invading our world with 20,000 ships," David pointed out, joining the group. "At this point, we are choosing between different kinds of war. We would prefer the kind fought with information rather than lives." Bright thought about the children he had played with in the park, about the wounded soldiers being treated in human hospitals, about the names on the memorial walls. "If I help you do this, I will be committing treason. My own people will hunt me." "Then ask for asylum," Maria offered. "Stay here, help us build bridges instead of walls." "I am the chancellor of a 12,000-year-old empire. I cannot simply abandon my position." "Why not?" Dr. Foster asked. "What is that position worth if it means ordering the deaths of billions to maintain a lie?" The question hung in the air. Bright looked at each human face around him. They were not trying to manipulate him. They were simply asking him to choose what he believed was right over what was expected. "Show me your broadcast plan," he said finally. 6 hours later, the Horizon Network activated. But instead of weapons platforms powering up, communication relays came online. The transmission was simple. Video footage from the first battle, showing human ships disabling Imperial vessels without destroying them. audio recordings of General Stone offering medical aid, footage of wounded aliens being treated in human hospitals, images of Chancellor Bright playing with human children in a park. And finally, a message from Bright himself, recorded 1 hour earlier. People of the Galactic Empire, I am Chancellor Bright. What I am about to tell you will be considered treason by some, but I believe it is truth. Our empire was built on a foundation of forced unity. We told ourselves it was necessary. We convinced ourselves it was right. But Earth has shown me something different. They showed me strength that chooses mercy. They showed me weapons that remain silent. They showed me what civilization looks like when it is built on choice rather than compulsion. The message played on screens across 400 worlds. In homes, in government buildings, in military bases. Billions watched as their leader, the oldest and most respected figure in the empire, spoke words no chancellor had ever spoken. I am not ordering you to rebel. I am not asking you to abandon your worlds. I am simply asking you to question, to wonder if there might be a better way, because Earth is offering us that better way. A galaxy where different species cooperate because they choose to, not because they are forced to. And I, for one, want to see what that galaxy looks like. The broadcast ended. Then came the response, not immediate but building like a wave. Younger species began broadcasting their own messages. Pip's homeworld was first, declaring neutrality and requesting dialogue with Earth. Then another, and another. Within 12 hours, 87 worlds had withdrawn their ships from the attack fleet. Within 24 hours, that number grew to 214. The fleet that was supposed to number 20,000 was reduced to 8,000, and those crews were increasingly uncertain about their mission. The hardliners aboard the Council flagship attempted to override the withdrawals. They ordered the remaining fleet to attack immediately, but Admiral Crest, scarred and tired, made a choice. All ships, this is Admiral Crest. I am ordering a full stand-down. Any vessel that proceeds with the attack will be marked as mutinous and will face imperial justice. This fleet is returning to home port for reassignment. The hardliners tried to relieve him of command. Crest simply cut their communication channels and continued issuing orders. His reputation was enough. The fleet commanders obeyed him, not the politicians. On Earth, alarms that had been preparing to sound fell silent. The defense network powered down from combat readiness to standby. General Stone watched the fleet disperse on his tactical display and allowed himself one deep breath. "It worked," he said, sounding surprised. "Truth usually does," Maria replied. "Eventually." Chancellor Bright stood beside them, no longer chancellor of anything, now simply a refugee who had chosen conscience over power. "What happens now?" "Now," Maria said, "we find out if your empire can evolve or if it will fracture. Either way, Earth will be here, offering friendship to anyone willing to accept it." Pip's transmission arrived an hour later. Formal request from 412 worlds. They are asking for a new treaty, not empire, not conquest, something they are calling the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds. They want Earth to help write the charter. David looked at Maria. "We are not ready for this." "No one ever is," she replied. "But we will try anyway, because that is what we do." The space station hung in neutral territory, exactly 300 light-years from Earth, equidistant from the 5 major power centers of what used to be the Galactic Empire. Construction had taken 4 months, a joint effort by 17 different species who wanted something better than what they had known. Ambassador David Reed stood at the observation deck, watching ships arrive. Each one carried delegates from worlds that had chosen to attend this historic summit. Some came eagerly, others came warily. All came wondering if this experiment in cooperation could actually work. "Nervous?" Pip asked, climbing up to stand beside him. The small mammalian delegate had become Earth's strongest ally in the past months. "Terrified," David admitted. "We are trying to replace 12,000 years of imperial structure with an idea. Ideas can fail. Ideas can also change everything, Pip countered. Look at them. 300 worlds sent representatives. That is 3/4 of the old empire. They are choosing to be here. The conference chamber was designed to accommodate the diversity of galactic life. Some delegates needed high gravity, others low. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some existed as physical beings, others as energy patterns. The engineering required to make everyone comfortable in one space was staggering. President Maria Torres called the assembly to order. Her image was projected large enough for all to see, while translation devices rendered her words into 400 languages simultaneously. Honored delegates, we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, not as empire and subjects, but as equals seeking common ground. Earth does not claim to have all the answers. We simply offer a different question. Not how do we control each other, but how do we help each other? A delegate from the old Imperial Core world stood. His species had ruled for 8,000 years. President Torres, your words are beautiful, but governance requires more than philosophy. It requires structure, laws, enforcement. Without the Empire's framework, we have chaos. Then let us build a new framework, Maria replied. One based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced compliance. And when worlds choose not to cooperate, challenged another delegate, her crystalline form refracting light. When they pursue their own interests at the expense of others, the Empire prevented such conflicts through unified authority. Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward, carrying a data tablet. We studied your Empire's history. In the last 1,000 years, you had 317 regional conflicts that required military intervention. Your unified authority prevented some wars but created others. Oppressed populations do not stop fighting. They just fight differently. Former Chancellor Bright, now serving as an advisor to Earth's delegation, activated a holographic display. I spent my life defending the Empire's methods, but I have learned something these past months. Fear maintains order temporarily. Respect maintains it permanently. We need to build a system where respect is earned, not demanded. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates wanted a strong central government. Others wanted complete independence. Earth's delegation listened more than they spoke, offering suggestions rather than demands. On the third day, a crisis emerged. Two neighboring worlds, both represented at the summit, had a boundary dispute that dated back centuries. Under imperial rule, it had been suppressed. Now, with the empire dissolved, old grievances surfaced. The delegates from both worlds stood shouting at each other, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the speed and venom of their words. Other delegates began taking sides. The chamber descended into chaos. General Stone, observing from Earth's command center, opened a channel to the station. David, should we intervene? Not yet, David replied. Let them argue, let them get angry. Democracy is messy. But the argument escalated. One delegate pulled a ceremonial weapon. Security personnel rushed forward. The chamber teetered on the edge of violence. Then a young delegate from a minor world stood up. Her species had been among the last to join the old empire, barely 50 years ago. She spoke quietly, but something about her tone cut through the noise. Stop, please, just stop and listen. The chamber slowly quieted. You are arguing about a border, a line on a map. Is that line worth destroying what we are trying to build here? Is it worth going back to the old ways? One of the arguing delegates sneered. You do not understand the history between our worlds. You are right, she agreed. I do not, but I understand this. My world was conquered by the Empire 30 years before I was born. We lost our culture, our language, our identity. Everything that made us who we were was slowly erased. Now we have a chance to be ourselves again. Not because Earth gave us that chance, because we are choosing it together. And you want to throw that away over a border. The chamber fell absolutely silent. The delegate who had drawn his weapon slowly lowered it, shame crossing his features. Maria seized the moment. "Delegate, what is your name?" "Rita," the young delegate replied. "Rita has shown us something important. Our histories matter. Our grievances are real. But we are not bound by our past unless we choose to be. What if, instead of fighting over that border, you work together to make it irrelevant?" "How?" asked one of the arguing delegates. Dr. Foster pulled up a map. "Create a shared economic zone. Allow free movement across the border. Combine your resources for mutual benefit. Turn the thing dividing you into something connecting you." The two delegates looked at each other, centuries of hostility between them. Finally, one extended his hand. The other, after a long pause, took it. "We will try," they said together. The breakthrough changed everything. Over the next week, the charter of the Galactic Alliance of Free Worlds took shape, not imposed from above but negotiated by everyone present. Every world would maintain sovereignty over its internal affairs. Disputes would be resolved through mediation, not military force. Technology and resources would be shared voluntarily. And most importantly, membership would always be a choice. On the final day, 347 worlds signed the charter. Not all of the old empire, but enough to represent a new beginning. Pip stood beside David, watching the signatures accumulate. "We did it." "We started it," David corrected. "Now comes the hard part, making it work." Back on Earth, celebrations erupted in cities across the planet. Humanity had gone from isolated world to galactic mediator in less than a year. But in quiet government offices, the real work was beginning. General Stone briefed his commanders on the new reality. "Our weapons stay active. Our defenses stay ready. Peace is wonderful, but it requires protection. We trust, but we verify." Dr. Foster addressed her scientific teams. "We share our knowledge, but gradually. Trust takes time to build. We help them advance, but we do not make them dependent on us." President Maria held a press conference for Earth citizens. "Today marks a new era for humanity and for the galaxy, but we must remember what got us here. Not our weapons, though they helped. Not our technology, though it impressed. What got us here was our choice to offer mercy when we could have demanded submission. That choice defines us. We must never forget it." Chancellor Bright, watching from his new home in Geneva, smiled. His former empire had collapsed, his former power was gone, and he had never been happier. He had exchanged authority for authenticity, control for conscience. That evening, as Earth's sun set over the mountains, Bright walked through the park where he had played with human children months before. Some of those same children were there, and they waved at him, calling him by name, inviting him to join their game. He accepted, as he always did now. Because this, he realized, was what civilization was supposed to feel like. Not grand, not powerful, just people of different types choosing to spend time together because they wanted to, not because they had to. In orbit above, the last Imperial ship maintaining the old border patrols powered down its weapons and joined the new Alliance patrol. The Empire had not fallen to conquest. It had evolved through choice, and that made all the difference. The galaxy was learning what Earth had learned centuries before, that the best way forward was together, by choice, with respect for what made each species unique rather than demanding they all become the same. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and failures. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy had hope that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. And hope, as humans had proven, was the most powerful force in the universe. 50 years passed like a breath in galactic time, yet everything had changed. The space station that had hosted the first Alliance summit had grown into a city, a massive structure housing permanent delegations from 800 worlds. What began as an experiment in cooperation had become the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Ambassador Rita, no longer young but still passionate, walked through the station's central plaza. She watched children of 20 different species playing together, their parents chatting nearby without translation devices because they had learned each other's languages. This was normal now. An entire generation had grown up knowing only cooperation, not conquest. Ambassador Rita, a young human, called out, "Do you have time for an interview?" Rita smiled. Journalism students from across the Alliance often sought out the original delegates, wanting to understand how the old ways had given way to the new. Of course. What would you like to know? Why did it work? The student asked, activating a recording device. Every model predicted the Alliance would collapse within a decade. Instead, it thrived. What made the difference? Rita considered the question carefully. It worked because Earth taught us something we had forgotten, that civilization is not about control, it is about trust, and trust is not given, it is earned slowly. Through keeping your promises, even when no one is watching. On Earth, David Reed sat in his retirement home overlooking the ocean. He was old now, his hair white, his hands marked by decades of work, but his eyes were clear as he watched the sunset. A holographic display showed the current state of the Alliance: 812 worlds, 17 major trade networks, 0 military conflicts in the past 30 years. His granddaughter visited, bringing her own children. "Grandfather, tell us the story again, about how you told the Empire no." David chuckled. "That story has been told so many times it has become mythology, but the truth was simpler than the legends. We said no because we believed freedom was worth defending. We showed mercy because we believed enemies could become friends. And we offered cooperation because we believed it was better than domination." "Did you know it would work?" his granddaughter asked. "Not at all," David admitted. "We hoped, we tried, we learned as we went, and we made mistakes along the way, but we never stopped trying to do better." In the Galactic Archives, Dr. Foster's successor uploaded the latest research data. Earth's scientific advances were now shared freely with all Alliance members. In return, human scientists learned from alien perspectives, creating innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Medicine had advanced by centuries. Physics had been revolutionized. Art and culture from 800 worlds enriched everyone who chose to participate. Former General Stone, now retired and teaching military history at Earth's Academy, addressed his class of students from 40 different worlds. "The weapons we built to defend Earth still exist. They are maintained, tested, and kept ready. But they have not been fired in combat for 50 years. That is not because threats do not exist. It is because we built something stronger than weapons. We built relationships." A student raised her hand. "But Professor, what if a new threat emerges? What if some species refuses to join the Alliance and becomes aggressive?" Stone nodded. "Then we defend ourselves and our allies, but we do it the way Earth has always done it. We warn first. We demonstrate second. We offer mercy third. And we only use lethal force as an absolute last resort, because the goal is never victory. The goal is peace with the option for future friendship." Chancellor Bright, now ancient even by his species' long standards, sat in his Geneva apartment writing his memoirs. The title was simple: How I Learned to Stop Ruling and Start Living. His book had become required reading in Alliance schools, teaching new generations about the courage it takes to admit you were wrong. His final chapter addressed the future. "I was born into an empire that believed control was necessary for order. I lived most of my life enforcing that belief. But Earth showed me that order maintained by force is just slavery with better propaganda. True order, lasting peace, comes from billions of individuals choosing cooperation because they see the benefit, not because they fear the alternative." Pip, now the Alliance's senior mediator, responded to his 1,000th dispute resolution request that year. Two worlds disagreed about mining rights in an asteroid belt. Under the old empire, the stronger world would have simply taken what it wanted. Under the Alliance, they came to Pip seeking fair arbitration. Within 3 days, he had helped them craft an agreement where both worlds benefited more through cooperation than either could have gained through conflict. The solution was obvious once both sides stopped thinking like competitors and started thinking like partners. On the edges of Alliance space, exploration vessels pushed into uncharted territory. Each ship was crewed by mixed-species teams, human adaptability combining with alien perspectives to solve problems neither could handle alone. When they encountered new civilizations, they followed the protocols Earth had established. Observe first, contact carefully, offer friendship freely, accept rejection gracefully. Some new species joined the alliance immediately. Others chose isolation, which was respected. And a few became trading partners without full membership, which was also perfectly acceptable. The alliance did not demand uniformity. It celebrated diversity. In the park in Geneva where Bright had first played with human children, a monument stood. Simple stone carved with words in 800 languages. The message was the same in each. We were warned, we listened. Together we built something better. President Maria Tours, long retired, visited that monument on the 50th anniversary of the Alliance's founding. She was invited to speak, but declined. Instead, she stood quietly among the crowd, just another citizen celebrating what cooperation had achieved. A reporter found her anyway. "Madam President, Earth changed the galaxy. How does that feel?" Maria smiled gently. Earth did not change the galaxy. We just reminded everyone of what they already knew deep down. That working together is better than standing alone. That mercy is stronger than cruelty. That civilization is measured not by how well you control others, but by how well you respect them. And the weapons, the reporter pressed. The platforms that could destroy worlds, why keep them if we have peace? Because peace is a choice that must be defended, Maria replied. Our weapons are a promise to ourselves that we will never again be vulnerable to those who choose conquest over cooperation, and to others that we will defend not just ourselves but anyone who asks for our protection. Strength that serves peace is not a contradiction. It is wisdom. As the sun set on the celebration, ships from 800 worlds left Earth's orbit, returning to their homes. But they were not really separate anymore. They were connected by trade, by friendship, by shared goals and mutual respect. The empire that had tried to force unity had failed. The alliance that offered it freely had succeeded. In his retirement home, David watched his great-grandchildren play with alien children in a virtual space where distance meant nothing. They were planning some game that involved mathematics he could not follow and jokes in languages he did not speak. But their laughter needed no translation. This was the future Earth had fought for. Not dominance, not isolation, just the freedom to be themselves while respecting others' freedom to do the same. Simple in concept, difficult in practice, but worth every moment of effort. The weapons platforms still orbited in the dark, silent guardians of a peace that had been earned through strength and maintained through wisdom. They were relics of a time when Earth stood alone against an empire. But they were also reminders that civilization is fragile, that freedom is precious, and that the choice to cooperate rather than dominate is one that every generation must make for themselves. The galaxy had chosen cooperation, and in that choice, humanity had found not subjects to rule but friends to cherish, partners to learn from, and a future worth building together. 50 years had passed. The empire was a memory, the alliance was reality, and somewhere on Earth in a park where children played and adults dreamed, the cycle continued. Different species, same hopes. Different worlds, same galaxy. Different paths, same destination. Peace, freedom, friendship, choice. These were humanity's gifts to the galaxy. Not technology, not weapons. Just the simple reminder that everyone deserves the right to choose their own future, and that choice is always more powerful than compulsion. The stars shone overhead, each one a sun where free beings pursued their dreams. And Earth, The little blue world that had stood up to an empire and offered mercy instead of vengeance, watched over them all, not as ruler, not as guardian, simply as friend. And that was enough.